This is Guitar Business Radio, the podcast for the business of guitar. No reviews, no demos, no idle chatter, just useful dialogue and information to help you get the most out of your guitar-related business. Whether you're a guitar builder or a guitar player or just something in between, this is for you. Now, here's your host. Oh, wait, it's me, Jeffrey D. Brown. So let's get to it. Welcome to episode 8, where in addition to our interview with Santa Cruz Guitar Company founder Richard Hoover, we'll have a couple of new segments for you, including the debut of The Shorts, which is exactly what it sounds like. Short, curated news briefs that we think you'll find interesting. We're also introducing our supporting roles for this week, and in the value shot, I'll talk more about competitive criticism and a few other things. So keep your headphones on. Now, with Guitar Business Radio, I just want to quickly get it on the record that this is intended to be a politics-free zone. I avoid taking partisan positions publicly for a lot of reasons, but mostly because I don't care much for politics. I know I'm not alone in that. I have opinions on the subject, but I'm certainly not a traditional right-wing or left-wing guy. I'm well informed on the issues, but I don't spew standard off-the-shelf talking points manufactured by one side or the other. I don't judge people based on their political views. Their actions, on the other hand, may tell a different story. If you've listened to the value shot, you'll know I'm big on operating from a set of foundational principles. At that level, I find that most of us agree on those big common issues that face us. The problem is, most people have obscured that level. There's way too much invested in the more complex layers that sit way above the foundation. Too many personal special interests are at stake. Too many advantages to be gained, and that's unfortunate. We will, however, be bringing you a lot of diversity on this show. Our goal is to appeal to a large audience, even though we're a business program in a niche industry. So we're not going to get caught in the false sense of security from a manufactured comfort zone. Although maybe that in itself is a separate and possibly lucrative business. Maybe we should call it My Comfort Zone. Yeah, kind of like a nice pillow. This is our supporting roles segment, where in each episode we'll briefly introduce our new show supporters and also recognize those ongoing contributors who help to make this show possible. For those who choose the anonymous supporter role, we'll recognize you by not recognizing you, in public anyway. In private, you'll get a personal thank you of epic proportions. The amount of epicness will, of course, vary by instance. So this week, we want to say thanks to our latest supporter in the Guitar Business Professionals category, Musicians Institute's Guitar Craft Academy in Nashville, and to Michael Pfeiffer for facilitating that, and you can find them at nashville.mi.edu. And in the Guitar Business Insider category, our thanks to exhibitorwebinartraining.com and Richard Urshik, who is one of the trade show industry's leading authorities on exhibitor training. Maybe some of you can benefit from that. And you can find information about these folks and others on our show supporters page in the supporting roles section of our website at guitarbusinessradio.com. Check it out. This is your source for profoundly interesting news briefs. Guitar Business Radio presents The Shorts. Well, as you might imagine, I listen to a lot of other podcasts just to see what others are doing, and occasionally because it's a show that I'm actually interested in. And in our first installment of The Shorts, I thought I would tell you about a new podcast that you might have an interest in. So most of us know or know of George Gruen, pretty much a household name in the guitar business for a bazillion years. And George has teamed up with WSM 650 Radio in Nashville to produce a bi-weekly podcast called Gruen's Vault. The show comes out every other Thursday, and the format is extremely simple. George interviews the masters, great guitar players, songwriters, and other performers, but clearly the focus is on guitar. They've only done 2 episodes so far, but I've listened to most of both of them. The first with Vince Gill, who's a favorite of mine, and the second with Jimmy Capps. And I must tell you, as far as podcasts go, these are really easy listening, very mellow, but also very clear and clean. And most importantly, they're interesting. Now, I have a lot of gripes with podcasts because of what I often refer to, and you've heard me say, idle chatter. I try to avoid that here like the plague, but unfortunately, many shows are exactly that. And frankly, I don't have time for that. But Gruhn's Vault is not idle at all, and I would encourage you to check it out if that interests you. And one more thing. I know this may sound like a review of sorts, and I say often and dramatically that we do no reviews. What I'm really referring to when I say that is product reviews and demos and the like. Here in the shorts, I'm going to be telling you about news and discoveries that I find interesting, and hopefully you will too. And that's what this is. And if you would like to suggest something for inclusion in the shorts, you can do so on the participate page on our website. Do that soon. Well, Richard Hoover started Santa Cruz Guitar Company over 40 years ago, and in that time has developed a very stable business producing the kind of guitars he wants to produce, meaning the best they can possibly be. While he still wants his company to be considered a boutique builder, and I think that's fair, they still manage to produce 400 to 500 guitars a year for a lot of happy customers. He has a lot to say, and Richard Hoover joins us right here and right now. Well, Richard, thank you so much for coming on the show with us today. I really appreciate it.
Jeff, it's my pleasure, and I thank you for your service. Anybody that wants to talk about guitars is okay in my book.
Well, that's great. And, it's always nice to have somebody on the other end that's been in the business as long as I have. So we're kind of probably of the same generation, so I appreciate having you on. At the risk of being kind of predictable, which I'm afraid I'm starting to be, I always like to start off the show with somebody talking about the foundational components of the business. And I think this is really so important in helping us to understand a lot about what the company is in its current form. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about at what point you actually felt that you had a business going, and at that time or whenever, did you have some kind of vision or bigger purpose in mind at that point?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and it's a really good definition of who we are. So when I started building guitars, I was motivated by just the joy of working with wood, being creative, and I loved everything about guitars. And when I started out, there were no books on making a steel string guitar. Videos hadn't been invented, so I read everything there was on violin making, and that became the foundations for how I built guitars. The difference is steel string guitars are loud enough that you really don't have to worry about too much sophistication. Marketing will sell guitars. But in the violin, you truly have to concentrate on the quality of sound and how to manipulate that. So that's what I carried into steel string guitar building. And here's the biggest difference. I didn't start out with the idea of beginning a business. If you were beginning a business, you'd be prudent to poll your target audience, find out what they're willing to pay, and then reverse engineer your guitar maker, your woods, people you hire, so you could hit that price target, right?
That's right, exactly.
I didn't know that working on my own, so I just set out to make the best guitar I possibly could. And we continue to do that today, and thank goodness that people are still willing to pay that. And 40 years later, we've gotten very good at it, and we run it as a prudent business so people don't have to pay too much, and we pay our bills. But that was all learned behavior, and the goal always was and still is to make the best guitar we possibly can.
Well, that's a great way to look at it. I look at business really kind of holistically. There's a lot of things that I do in my own life that I try to apply to business, and that I try to work with clients and try to intermix those things. And so that's why I think it's that understanding how people think about many things really has a lot to do with how they run their business and how their business evolves over the years. And that's why I think these foundational questions are really interesting and important. And I think that makes an awful lot of sense. So I've read a lot of stuff about you and about the company. And I know that you've talked about these early builds that you did for Tony Rice and Clapton and then others, I'm sure. So I'm kind of wondering about the extent of that kind of direct or implied endorsement and how that's affected the company over the years from the business perspective, because I know you've talked about that. But then beyond that, I'm also kind of interested to know if that's something that you actively cultivate now and manage currently as other companies do, or do you do something different?
I can give you a real insight to that. So let's go back 40 years. And I had built on my own for several years before I started Santa Cruz Guitar Company. And just a little backstory, the reason is I couldn't learn fast enough on my own. There wasn't enough information. And I made the conscious decision to work with a team with other people, and we could learn faster. So we had a good head start when we began making Santa Cruz branded guitars. But even if someone went into a shop and played one of our guitars and believed it was the best sounding instrument they'd ever heard, they'd be hesitant to buy because they'd be concerned what their friends would think if they didn't buy a Martin that they'd bought in this off-brand guitar. So what changed that is when the backstory now is, oh, Eric Clapton plays this guitar. People go, oh, now that's okay. Wait till my friends hear that I bought the guitar that Eric Clapton plays. So it gave us instant credibility, and people could believe their ears when they heard our guitar. So that's quite a bit different than the reverse, where somebody pays off a celebrity to play their instrument in public, and they use that as their credibility rather than the foundational value of the guitar itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it does. So
it was credibility, where before it would have it may have taken decades, because remember back then, people didn't make guitars. Martin and Gibson made guitars.
Sure, of course.
On the scene that did something different, and we really needed that leg up. And they both really happened to us. You know, they were both serendipity. It was a beautiful thing.
I'm not sure that my terminology for implied endorsement is correct, but there's something that does lend that credibility, and I'm just kind of wondering. That's kind of, I would say, an organic kind of endorsement. Right. Whereas, it is implied endorsement. I think that's a very good word, because we have no contracts, no written agreements with any artists. In fact, many of our most famous artists have endorsement deals with large companies, but ours is the guitar they play when it matters, in recording and things like that. So really, these are personal relationships that we developed over time, even the most famous ones that we work with. And we continue to do that. People come to us because they want a Santa Cruz guitar, not because they're looking for the best endorsement deal. If people are looking for that, we're not the right ones for them. No, I can see that. Am I assuming that you probably don't have an artist relations manager on the staff there, or do you have somebody that does that?
Well, we do. The artist relations at Santa Cruz Guitar Company are really my relationship with artists, and each one is a little different. We work together to be mutually beneficial, get exposure for each other and so forth. So it's, it is very much of an organic thing, but it's also very professional. We've never given a guitar away. People come to us because they would like a guitar, and the most famous professional pays for it. Now, I can't say that there's not times when a artist got a guitar for free, but it's not because we gave it to them. It's just because they never paid.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So it's great to have these relationships, because not only the promotional consideration and benefits, it's the feedback from somebody that's playing guitar as their primary tool for their creativity, and we get to learn what people want, how we can improve what we do.
Sure. Well, it sounds like you kind of have taken it to a little higher level, and maybe even go as far as to say a more meaningful level. That might be how I would look at it. Yeah,
I'm going to say one of the, implied in some of your questions here is, what are we doing here? And really, peace of mind and quality of life is our mission statement, and that means not doing something different in business that you wouldn't do in your personal life, and vice versa.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, and that's, I think, probably consistent with the way I look at things as well. But that would lead but that would lead me really into another question that I had for you. I'm guessing I'm right on this, but I get the sense that there are some really unique professional and probably personal relationships within Santa Cruz Guitar Company. And if I'm right, maybe you could just tell me something about that and how it impacts the business on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, sure. If I can make sure I'm understanding your question, are you talking about relationships within Santa Cruz Guitar Company or relationships?
Yeah, no, within the company. And I would say they're either professional or personal or both. But I get the sense that it's a unique environment to work in.
It very much is. First off, as custom builders, we're not just doing function like the shape of the neck or colors, cosmetics, and so forth. We're really building to order for sound. And that's pretty unheard of in this business. You'd think you make enough guitars, people would choose the ones they like. But we make guitars when they're already spoken for. So we're fitting somebody's needs as far as anything you could manipulate on your sound system with knobs and sliders are a personal choice. And we can control those things in an instrument. And the thing that everyone wants, even if they can't put it into words, is sustain and complexity of overtones, a rich, full-sounding guitar that lasts a long time. And that's pretty much random in the marketplace, but using the violin principles, we can do that in every guitar. So within the shop, we really have to specialize to become really, really good at what we do. So the person that voices and tunes the guitar top and later integrates that into the body has to do that for a long time with a lot of guitars to get truly consistent and add value to the instrument. And we are all guitar makers, so nobody wants to stay in one position forever. So unlike even most of the guitar boutique guitar companies, everybody here gets the opportunity eventually to move into other specialties. And I work with people here that have worked with me for almost 30 years, 25 years, 20 years, 15 years.
Wow, that's impressive.
And these are people that have been through all the disciplines and are masterful at all aspects of guitar building. And that is an awesome team situation. And those relationships obviously are not just boss employee. That wouldn't last. That wouldn't have that sustainability.
And that's it sounds to me like it's kind of cross training, but that's not the right word for it. But it sounds to me like your folks really end up having quite a breadth of skills.
That's the idea. I mean, we also have people that have been here for 6 months that are right out of guitar making school, but that's the direction they're headed in, and that is comes down to our quality level is spooky, as you well know, and the only way to maintain that is through everybody's individual desire to participate in the whole, in the completed guitar. And I use this opportunity to do a little bit of a boast here. Our quality control is in college textbooks as an example of attaining super high quality, and I've been invited to speak at quality control professional associations to tell them how we do it. And it's so common sense and it's so simple, but it takes the investment of each person working on their stuff to be invested in the final outcome. So it's necessary for us to do it that way.
Well, you said simple, and of course that's like the magic word for me because I'm always talking about that in a lot of my other talks and things that I get into. I'm big on simplicity. It's so easy for us to complicate things. We spend a lot of time making things much more complicated than they need to be. It doesn't mean... Yeah, exactly right. It's kind of part of my mantra. But that's really, really good information. And I think that the size of your group there and number of employees is, I don't think I remember, about how big is your staff now? I'll give you this caveat. Even though we're really, really stable with little turnover, we're human beings and people have to leave to caretake a parent. Sure, of course.
Or moves to another state. So we do have turnover. And at any given time, I'm going to say we're between 16 and 18 people involved in guitar making.
Yeah. Well, that's a good number.
Training somebody, we have an extra one, and when everybody's trained, we might be one down. But with cross-training, we have the flexibility there.
Once again, you've just led me perfectly into my next question in trying to kind of sort of place your company. I mean, you're not a garage or basement business. We know lots of those folks, but you're not what I would think of as a manufacturer. You're something in between. How would you describe it?
Well, we really practice a lot of the principles from violin making, which is kind of an individual luthier pursuit. When you're really into the professional instrument. And over 40 years, we've translated that into a team. So we work exactly like any individual luthier with the same consideration of quality, control of sound. In fact, to some degree, even more so than a lot of individual builders because we have the experience. And many single builders build the same as the factory paradigm where all the parts and pieces are made to exact sizes and assembled efficiently. We actually tune the components so that the instruments compose like a chord, which allows it to be in harmony and it sustains and has complex overtones. So with that, where we are is we're building with the same care and consideration as an individual builder, but we have 40 years of experience and refinements, so we can do it a lot more efficiently. We've been able to invest in systems or even tooling that will do the stuff that doesn't require artistry and judgment. There's truly no reason a luthier has to cut their own fret slots. They can't do better than a machine, and they'll eventually hurt themselves doing that kind of work.
I would think so.
As one example, so we can actually build the best guitar possible at less cost than a lot of single builders can. And the guitar that we sell for, let's say, between $6,000 and $10,000, you might find out in the marketplace from a single builder for in the 20,000s. So it's not to dismiss either individual builders or factories. We all have our place in this, but Santa Cruz is not in between those. We're really built like the individual luthier, but we have economies of scale and experience to do it, let's say, more efficiently.
Yeah, that's a really a good way to put it. Just kind of following on to that a little bit about growth, and I'm sure there's been some growth along the way. You didn't get to where you're at overnight, but I'm wondering now, 40 years into it, as you look toward the future, do you see growth in the company? And if so, where is it? What does it look like?
Absolutely. Any vital organism is in growth, is growing. If you don't, the opposite, that's pretty undesirable. You're dying. And but our growth is a byproduct of seeking higher and higher quality and more efficiencies, so that we can do, as we do something better, oftentimes we can clear away some of the inefficiencies and we can do more. And that's been a slow and steady thing. So, when I built on my own, I could do and keep a full-time job. I could only make half a dozen guitars a year. As two partners, we could maybe do 36. And today we do, way over 10 times that much with our efficiencies. So what we've been able to do is grow in the number of guitars we've built slowly but steadily. And again, it's an evolution and a byproduct of trying to do our best. It's not attaining a financial goal of making more guitars to hit a different strata in profitability. And when we've held true to that, we never have the temptation to let our quality drop, or worse, let that happen to us. So what it means for the future, we'll continue to benefit from continuous improvement. And also our growth over the years has really been, we've been able to get an appreciation for what we do. We've been able to get a more reasonable price for our guitars. And as time goes on, we'll probably have a higher average sales price because we're going to do more of the good stuff and less of the simple stuff. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, no, but it makes sense. I mean, so you're building, am I going to extrapolate a little bit, 300 or 400 guitars a year? Is that fair to?
Yeah, we're between 400 and 500.
Okay, all right.
Now, if I don't get a serious inquiry from a major company at least once every year for acquisition, I don't think we're doing the right thing. We're not desirable enough. But I'm not interested in selling the business because, again, we're after quality of life and peace of mind, and I've got the greatest vehicle in the world as a job for doing that. So I don't want to give it up and sell it. Also, we've had, all the time people are coming to us wanting to invest and help us grow. But I've seen so many of my friends that have gone that path and lived to regret it. It's like selling part of your soul. So we have a good thing. I don't want to break it, and I'm not going to stay in the same place. As I said, to have vitality, you need to be moving forward. And most of it's going to be due from building better guitars, more sophisticated guitars, and there you go.
I mean, plus you love what you do. You don't want to stop loving what you're doing, right?
Right. Now, in all practicality, Jeff, you're a guy. You come from my generation, and cash flow affects your judgment. And if I was ever in a situation where somebody I loved really was in a pickle, had a terminal illness or something I could do to save them, I might think of all this different. All my priorities could change. So I'm not saying never, ever, ever under any circumstances, but the way I see it right now, it's peachy. I'm going to keep it that way.
Yeah. Let me ask you kind of step away from your own business a little bit and give me your sort of big picture view of the guitar market in general. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people over the years, and I'm especially more recently trying to get a sense of where we're at. I mean, it's always changing, and especially the last few years, the last 10 years. I mean, it's in so many ways it's way different. There's lots of things that are still evergreen, I guess that you would say. But how do you see things?
Well, that's a huge question, and let me try to focus here. Our business and our market is somewhat unique. We have customers that cross over between, let's say, Martin and Taylor, or the single most famous builder. We get those customers, but our market, our demand is not driven by the same weather that Yamaha or a company that's 1 million guitars a year is. And for that, there's been quite a change. Our demographic has the primary demographic has always been people my age. When I was 19, I built guitars for people in college, and today I build guitars for people that are retired, have elective income, and finally want the best things. And that generation itself is aging out, but we also are building guitars for people now that have always wanted a Santa Cruz because their dad or even their grandfather could have played a Santa Cruz. So that's what they aspire to. And I don't see running out of orders ourselves, during my career anyway. We've always operated on a back order, and I hope it stays that way. People, for the most part, are more discriminating. They expect more out of the guitar than they did when I was a kid and played, and we're right in the right position for that.
It sounds like you are, and I guess that will bring me to my final question. And you kind of have a way of doing that, or somebody's doing it, is bringing these things right around. But here's another broad stroke question that's intended to inspire a small kind of narrow answer that you can expound on. But essentially, here it is. What sustains Santa Cruz Guitar Company?
We touched on a couple of those as we were talking. I was saying I don't do business different than my personal life. We use only responsibly harvested materials. We really are paying forward as we do our job. And we're open source, and that paying forward has generated our true bank account is goodwill. And goodwill is what sustains us. It will do things for us that money can't buy, and we get resources far beyond our means in that. So our day-to-day business involves people from aerospace, automobile engineering, chemistry, on and on and on. And that's all from our association and by doing the right things. So we always get more back than we give. So being open source and being doing the right thing is really what sustains us.
That's a terrific answer. Really appreciate that, and I think that's gonna do it for us right now. But I not only enjoyed having you on, but I'm going to look forward to talking to you again down the road and seeing how things have evolved between that time. But it's just been a pleasure. I really thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and I'm at your service. One of the things I'll promise you, if I can ever help advise you on things guitar, is I'll never burden you with opinion without a warning. I'll stick to proven experiments. Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, again, thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon, Richard.
Okay, man. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. In the last episode, I talked about so-called constructive criticism, and I said I thought it was an oxymoron, and I didn't see anything constructive about it. And by the way, I'm certainly not the first one to say that, but that being said, I also pointed out that I had come up with a criticism classification system, which may very well be original to me in my usage of it. So to review, those three categories of criticism are opportunistic, competitive, and vindictive. Remember, the first two are similar, where opportunistic criticism is seen in personal relationships and competitive criticism in business situations. They're both similar in that there's something to be gained from the criticism, like an advantage, superiority, control, etc. Now, while in episode 7 I talked in more detail about vindictive criticism, I suspect that most of you have known someone who used criticism against another person without necessarily having some evil, or as we may say, vindictive intent. I think often it's a way for people to deflect self-criticism, or in other circumstances to falsely portray themselves in a brighter light. Usually that plug gets pulled on that behavior at some point, and things can get pretty dark. But what about this competitive criticism? How does that work exactly? And if you or your business is the recipient, what can you do? Well, first of all, you may be asking, what does it look like? Where will I see it? Well, one of the obvious public places is social media, right? What about public reviews? Is this starting to make sense now? Has it happened to you already? If so, how did you feel about it? How did you respond to it, if at all? Those are all good and valid questions. I was thinking about this topic, and I thought to myself, I've opened myself up to criticism simply by doing this public show. I've gone way out on a limb here because I'm doing something different. I might even upset an apple cart here or there, and even worse, I could be very successful at this. Then what? How often have you seen companies go after competitors by publicly criticizing them or their products and services in ads? But that's just the most outward manifestation of competitive criticism. A deliberate and well-planned campaign to discredit a competitor in order to gain a market advantage can be damaging, all the way to devastating. In the beginning of this episode, I expressed my disdain for politics in general. But is there any better example of competitive criticism than in today's political campaigns? I don't think so. But now that I've brought this up, how do you respond if it happens to you? Well, that depends on how vulnerable you are, right? If your business has a weak spot or spots that can be exploited, you're going to be on the defensive. Not a great place to be. A better approach is to be proactive before this happens. There's a couple of things you can do. You can hide the weak spots and hope nobody finds them. The preferred approach, however, would be to strengthen them. By doing that, you essentially create a condition where the criticism simply cannot exist. Now, you notice that I've not gone into great detail yet in this discussion. If you've been listening to the value shots, that shouldn't be a surprise to you. We're building a foundation here of basic ideas that you can be adding to your thought processes. Like I've said many times before, we can easily add layers of complexity to all of these ideas. But if you haven't created the necessary foundation of knowledge, adding more complexity often results in the construction of, yep, you guessed it, a house of cards. So now that I've called your attention to this idea of competitive criticism, maybe you'll be watching with a more critical eye, as they say. And by the way, it's not the same, but you know what I mean. I'll get into more detail down the road on all of this stuff, but in the meantime, if you have questions or thoughts, don't hesitate to contact me. There are many ways to do that, and I always look forward to hearing from you. Remember that you can listen to all of these segments as standalone videos with captions on our website, in the videos section, or on our YouTube channel. Just search for Guitar Business Radio. And in closing, with only 8 episodes and a trailer under our belt with GBR, I can already sense that this is going to be a great journey. We've already accomplished a lot, and we're just getting started. Fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay positive, stay focused on the destination, and keep all your options open on how you're going to get there. And I'll see you on episode 9. And that's it for this episode of Guitar Business Radio. Thanks for being with us. You can stay tuned and stay in touch at guitarbusinessradio.com.